e-governance, future directions. Earlier today we had two very important sessions. The first one was roadmap for CSCs and basic citizen services, which was very electrifying experience for all of us. And the second was very elaborative and very informative session on enabling technology trends for citizen services. So now we are on to our third session. To start the session, I would now request Srimati Keshni Anand Arora, Deputy Director General, UIDAI. Can we have a huge round of applause for ma'am? I would now request Shri P.K. Das ji, Principal Secretary, Department of Social Justice and Empowerment, and Welfare of SC and GC, Government of India. Thank you so much, sir. Please, so humble and polite. And also I would like to request Shri Kishle Bhattacharya ji, National Business Head, Government, PSU and BFSI Vertical, RICO India Limited. I will now request Srimati Keshni Anand Arora ji to please start with the session. She will be moderating the session. Please.
I'm happy here, please.
Mr. Yudhvir Malik, Principal Secretary, ACS IT, all the officers, and the topic that we're discussing now is social inclusion through e-governance, future directions. I would say this is a very, very crucial topic, and I'm very thankful to P.K. Das and Mr. Bhattacharya to be with me. Their topics are basically, P.K. Das talks on emerging trends in the paradigms of governance, why use technology, and while Mr. Bhattacharya will be talking on social inclusion in Tamil. What I am talking about is social inclusion through e-governance with UIDAI. In fact, social inclusion is a very, very interesting topic, and in fact, I was going through the definition of social inclusion, and in fact, it was very interesting to note that most of the definitions were dealing with social exclusion and not social inclusion. So, in fact, the World Bank defines social inclusion as the process of improving opportunity, dignity of people, and disadvantage on the basis of their identity. In fact, social inclusion means positive steps that government takes to combat the risk of individual or communities being excluded from the mainstream and welfare schemes. So, social inclusion is basically facilitation. It is providing equal opportunity to grow and develop equal access to resources, improving capacity to utilize their opportunity. So e-governance is basically an instrument of change. It is improving public service delivery and social inclusion. If e-governance is that, then we would need a platform to work on. If we need a platform, then what is the platform we can work on? Is obviously Aadhaar. Because there are challenges. The challenges of e-governance is how to reach millions of residents who do not have any formal identity. It is to ensure that benefits reach those who deserve it, and how to check the pilferages in the government system. So these challenges are being addressed by Aadhaar now, and it facilitates financial inclusion. It's a formal, portable, unique identification of every citizen. So it has the inherent portability and the architecture that can perform that role. So it is now the world's largest online authenticable biometric database, because it is deduplicated. So basically you have only one identity and one account through which you can be given all all the subsidies, and therefore a person cannot have an advantage which is duplicate, and he cannot create any the misuse of the program. So it is a financial redress. As you know, Dr. Moore's committee recommended that by 2016, every resident will have a bank account. Then how? Basically, Aadhaar makes it easier. That through Aadhaar you can have that bank account. So we do generally Aadhaar payment bridge, and through NPCI that ultimately transfers funds to the Aadhaar enabled bank account. So it's a bank-led model, and therefore it simplifies the dispersal of all the funds. So it is today, in fact, so interestingly, in fact, when Haryana started the pension scheme, the major problem is the availability of banks who were ready for this situation. And now we have 256 banks which are active on APB. 6 crore Aadhaars are mapped to bank accounts. 17,000 micro ATMs deployed in field. 2 crore authentication transactions have already been done. So I think this is one important thing that we are able to really do something. So basically, Aadhaar is a platform. We have created a technological platform which is to work, and it is for the states to use it the way they want to, the organizations to use it the way they want it. The more you use it, the more the advantage. So basically, it is a both front-end and back-end platform that can be used for implementation of various schemes by various organizations. In fact, now private sector is also using it. So Aadhaar ensures efficient detection of fakes and duplicates. I would like to give you the examples of various states who have done it. In fact, in East Godavari district, when they used PDS, in some of the areas, the fakes were to the tune of 40%. There have been elimination of those in social welfare schemes to the extent of 18%. In LPG, the DBTL, which we say, 45,000 LPG consumers have been detected having 2 or more than 2 gas connections in 19 districts so far. So this will help in saving 23 crore annual subsidy just in the first phase of 19 districts. Then we did it in Chandigarh. 1866 non-existent and 11 duplicate beneficiaries were detected. In fact, Chandigarh is a place you can never imagine that people would misuse things. The Sampark centers were already doing it. But with Aadhaar, we got 1866, and this is an official figure given by the Secretary Director of Social Welfare. Similarly, in Pondicherry, we got 389 bogus family ration cards. So, overall, in the second phase, also in LPG, we found about 10 to 15% non-existent connections. I would like to show you today eKYC after I have finished this presentation. And in fact, there are many organizations now using it, and ultimately the banks are using it. They become KUAs, and they are basically using it for opening an account, for using other things. I think it's so easy now to open an account. You must have seen that ad by Amitabh Bachchan saying that "Ban gaya, mera account khul gaya." So that is the way we are following. So now important thing with us is everywhere in India we are trying to include those who could have been excluded, and there is a system of introducers. We've done special camps of hearing impaired, orphans, visually impaired, aged, leprosy affected. So we try to cover most of the things. So now I'll try to explain to you the case studies because that is the future, and the state should be able to really decide what they want to use. In fact, this region is also quite active now in PDS. You'll be happy to note that Haryana has also started telling their ration depots to have Aadhaar with the ration cards. Punjab is already doing it in in a very large way. Himachal will finish off by March end all the seeding with the Aadhaar because one thing is very clear, with Food Security Act, it is so difficult otherwise to prevent the duplicates. This is the only solution that we will find ultimately. So in fact, in Aadhaar, the AP was the front runner and they authenticated this, simply authenticated the beneficiaries, and ultimately there was a lot of deduplication done. The fakes were 40%. 1 lakh unique beneficiaries authenticate every month in Andhra Pradesh. So ultimately the supply chain management is also done through this, and it has brought a real good result here. Chandigarh has been a very great experience with social pension. Every month, ICICI Bank is handling it in every Sampark center. We are having authentication of all social welfare beneficiaries, and almost 9 crore has been paid to the pensioners through Aadhaar enabled pension scheme, AEPS. So in fact, it is such an interesting situation that earlier social welfare was giving in quarterly way the pension. Now they're doing every month. And in fact, the LPG subsidy is also coming through these accounts. So even LPG is now given through the AEPS. So that is the change which has been brought. In Chandigarh, another experiment has been done with the slum rehabilitation scheme, where the slum, when we allot the flats, generally what happens that they get double benefits, they sell off the flats. Now they are doing through Aadhaar, and Aadhaar is taken for the husband and wife, and ultimately after 3 months it is being seen whether he retains it or not, whether he has left it or not. That has really helped to ensure that the benefit reaches to those who deserve it, and they also don't misuse the advantage. That is another thing which is being done. Similarly, LPG payments, as you already know, we are already 2.17 crore customers. It has been kept on hold. But let me say because of the benefits, the ministry is so convinced that ultimately it will start again. But it may take time, or it may. But ultimately, the advantages are so much that nobody can ignore this situation. Now, some of the areas where we are working and we want the states and the institutions to come forward is the health side. Haryana is basically providing free drug delivery, free surgery, free everything. So one of the ways to deal with the situation is if PGI and the whole region plans registration with Aadhaar number, there will be a lot of advantage to the whole region, because people are illiterate, they lose their receipts, they don't know the record. So if the full record keeping is done properly, the whole region has a system of health set up, connected with each other, and it will really help in the longer run. Similarly, the free drug delivery also, you can prevent misuse. So these are the things, in fact, I've discussed with some of the health. PGI has almost agreed to start with the Aadhaar number along. So similarly, Haryana, Punjab and Himachal and J&K can play the same role. So portability of patient records can be a real helpful result. Similarly, it is very interesting to note that Trident Industries has started doing the payment to their employees through Aadhaar. I was really surprised why they want to do it. In fact, Raheja Properties also started doing, the process has already started, and there are a number of other industries who have already come to me and they want to do the payments. I was wondering why do they want it. In fact, what happens is that they have different service providers. The outsourced contract employees through various agencies. So once they chuck out a person, they retrench, they say this person is no longer needed, he changes his name and goes to somebody else. And they ultimately, in the different industries of theirs, ultimately they have the same person coming back. And the payments are also not given by these agencies, and ultimately they don't know what is happening and the payments are going to their bank accounts or not. The proper control is not there. The best thing about Aadhaar is the reconciliation that we get in the evening. So we come to know, in fact in Himachal it happened that the duplicate payments are done. So somebody said, why this has happened? I said, at least this used to happen, this is the bank system, used to happen. But why? Is that in the evening you come to know this has happened, therefore you are able to check it. Otherwise the reconciliation takes lots and lots of time and ultimately we are not able to do anything. So the attendance of contractual employees is one area where we can really work on. And I would request everyone to give a thought on it and work on the system. In Haryana, I know that we are having a one village system or total Haryana system where Aadhaar is being used and they've already used in Barwala. In fact, that is an area where we can really work hard and ultimately it has to be connected. And this is a very, very good project that Haryana has planned under Mr. Yudhvir Malik. And ultimately, we are giving a platform. But this platform has to be used. It is for the state governments and for the departments to know how they want to use it. We can only facilitate. But this is the future. The future of e-governance is through technology, through platforms, through systems, and this provides a robust platform where there may be problems, there may be ups and downs with UIDAI, but ultimately a platform which has already given a 60 crores Aadhaar has to go on. So we must continue working. Thank you very much. Mr. P.K. Das will be speaking on the next topic on the session.
This is Krishna Anand Arora, Mr. Yudhvir Singh Malik, Mr. Bhattacharya, and friends and colleagues who are present here. This morning, when I brought out my bandala to put on for this occasion, my daughter was a little surprised, because she generally sees me putting this on twice in a year, on 15th of August and 26th of January, if I attend the governor's function. So I have to give some explanation to her. Nowadays, families are so democratic that you cannot do anything like selecting your suit without giving an explanation for it. Well, the occasion has two elements of both 15th of August and 26th of January. When you come to the seminar, you are generally free from the normal restrictions that your government functioning imposes on you, and you can express yourself a little better. So you are independent, relatively. Also, the topic, the subject of seminar today and yesterday is to make the real republic realizable. When the republic happened, it happened with the hope that everybody who is a member of the republic would be equally empowered, would be equally participating, and would be a true citizen. this discussion is actually an effort to find ways and means to achieve that. Therefore, please note that I am suitably attired in order to both be independent and also to strive for a little bit of better republic. At the same time, there is another aspect to this Bandhala. When I joined service, I was advised that this is actually the uniform of the All India services. That whenever there is an occasion to represent yourself as a member of the service, you put it on and go. So today in this seminar, I not only represent myself and my department, I also represent the faceless All India services who are part of who are partly to be blamed for the mess that we are in and partly to be credited for whatever progress we have made. So I speak for myself and I speak for my service when I say this. Mostly in seminar there is this feeling that you can choose such forums to ask questions. Sometimes you ask questions to stop things, which some people accuse me and Mr. Indra Malik of doing consistently in our posting in finance department. So sometimes you ask questions to see whether proper preparations have been made, whether we are in the right direction, whether the theoretical constructs have been put in place, or there is some contradiction. A seminar allows people to raise a discordant note to see whether the majority opinion or majority preparedness or majority direction is actually a correct direction. I will probably try to do some of that. You see, whenever we meet in such occasions, there is a common refrain that we are in the midst of a change, that we are seeing a time of transition. But if you look back in history, for the last 200 years, we are always in the midst of a change and there is some transition going on. Whether transition in terms of political control or transition in terms of administrative philosophy or transition in terms of the common man's role in governance or society's position, everything has always been in a flux. I suppose everything will continue to be in a flux in a civilization because change is generally the order of the day. Now, does change happen for the sake of change itself? There is a deeper meaning or a better objective for such change happening. That is what we need to see. The present time also is no exception to this change that is happening. Where popular discontent with the governance has brought forth a new wave of new governance practices and practitioners who occupy our socio-political debate space. I am referring to some new political forces emerging within the country who have emerged primarily on the force of their pointing out inadequacy and non-productivity of the earlier existing political ethos and governance systems. It is not bad at all that we have such growth happening. Rather, it is a welcome development, not at all because it is the final answer to our quest for an appropriate or just governance framework. Rather, for the intellectual challenges it throws at us to seek a just and appropriate model of governance. Therefore, when we blame the people saying that though they raise questions, they don't have right answers, we don't have to blame them at all. Because they are a symptom and a product and a representative of their time. So they are probably given the task of raising questions and not necessarily answering to all the problems and leaks and loopholes and leakages of our governance system. In the past, governance was not only shaped by the four corners of a dominant ideology, but also by the limitation of the capacity of state apparatus to interact and serve the citizens individually and in groups. It's very clear that all political ideologies profess to serve the people, profess to serve the state. Before the modern era, in the advent of 20th century, there was no doubt about who these political ideologies were and how they viewed the state state, how viewed the government apparatus, and how they viewed welfare or utility or benefits to be given to the people at large. But over a period of time, this underwent a change. Slowly, the laissez-faire theory gave way to a welfare state even in the West. Industrialization required a greater amount of interface between the citizen and the state apparatus. So the areas which were earlier not being covered in citizens' life through governance or through interventions of government were brought into the core of governance. Therefore, the West and the East for some time in terms of governance looked very similar. And that is the time when some people started saying that we have achieved what is called the end of ideology. That there is no political ideological difference between any country or any bloc within this world now. What is differentiating them is their appreciation of economic resources and economic choices and decision making to achieve their potential. But all of a sudden we found that the Soviet bloc collapsed and the two competing ideologies now went away. We are now saying that there are two sets of ideologies now in the world. One is the revisiting neo-liberal ideology of the West and the emerging nations ideology of a better governance for its people. I will try to capture how these actually shape our thinking and our formation of governance paradigm for ourselves within the context of our country. Evolving guiding political philosophies have shaped the nature of state, governance and the effort to achieve the socio-political equilibrium. Inclusion is about perception. Madam rightly says that this term inclusion is so new in our lexicon that it is not rightly defined. Therefore, it is for different people to interpret it differently, and it's a stick which can be used by everybody, the police as well as the rioters. But inclusion is about perception. It is about identity, and it is not about structures. In the past, in the context, we have talked about various contrasting locational perceptions of individuals and groups. The center-periphery framework talked about some people being in the center of things and others being on the periphery. It could be both in terms of the geographical location and in terms of interaction with the government apparatus. Then there was this mainstream and offbeat framework. Some people who believed in the philosophy of the mainstream and some people who believed otherwise. Then there was this issue of the status quo and the subaltern. All these were largely seen basically in the context of geographical and functional locations. But obviously, inclusion is not about these structures, but it's about perception and therefore about communication. Inclusion is about communication. And to drive home this point, I want to narrate a small anecdote from my experience as an observer in the last assembly elections in Uttar Pradesh. I had a PSO, obviously a local head constable. He narrated this incident to me during one of my long drives in the constituency. This is about a very poor Yadav family in a very poor district, remote district, in a remote village in Uttar Pradesh, and how he felt included vis-a-vis Mr. Mulayam Singh Yadav. Mulayam Singh Yadav was to come to the district for a public meeting, and he was supposed to come either by a helicopter or by a plane. So, around the time when the meeting was to take place, there was some buzz above in the sky, not necessarily by the plane which was carrying Mr. Mulayam Singh Yadav, but this gentleman Yadav, in his own village, inside his own courtyard, he told his wife दद्दा आ रहे हैं, थोड़ा आड़ हो जाए. What is this? He would have no direct interaction, interface, benefit from Mulayam Singh Yadav. But he has a sense of inclusion there. He connects to him. It happens in a traditional context. Inclusion, therefore I am saying, is not about what is being given to people, about whether they are feeling they are being given, about the feeling whether they are belonging, about the feeling as to whether they are interacting and they belong to the same mainstream idea and mainstream construct. Therefore, though I do not endorse the custom of parda that the wife was asked to adopt, nor do I believe that the so-called affinity and inclusion is a substantial gain, but it proves that perception of inclusion is a predominant notion, and therefore, when we talk about social inclusion, we will have to work on perception. And in the context of my discussion, from now onwards, I will try to show how one model of governance, one paradigm of governance allows such communication and perception to build while others do not. How do we let go of traditional tools of inclusion and create a new secular, broad-based framework of inclusion for all our citizens and yet deliver equity and public good to all of them? Today, if you follow the socialistic idea, clearly it is said that the ruling dominant group, social group of the day, control the state apparatus. And through that state apparatus, it gives the benefits to its own group members. Even without referring to socialistic framework, we all know that various competing political elites come to power in different states and in the center, and they represent some group interests. These group interests could be pure social group interests. In some states, some caste-based organizations come to power, and their primary agenda is to restore the social balance in their favor and to divide the spoils of power among their caste or social group members. Now, that is also one kind of inclusion. If a majority formation takes up such position of power and provides inclusion for its social group member, that may be inclusion for a majority, but yet it is not a desirable inclusion. So what is the inclusion that we are talking about when we are talking about social inclusion? We are talking about inclusion of all, and inclusion, benefit of inclusion is being derived or being attributed and being entitled not because they belong to a social group, but because primarily they are citizen and citizen only. So in a secular modern state, the administrative paradigm talks about in citizen being entitled to services and benefits and inclusion simply because he is a citizen. There need not be any reference to social, religious or caste status. The inclusion flows from only being a citizen, which is a modern, non-theocratic, non-religious concept. For this to be achieved, we need to be a bit more academic, look at how governance and its practical aspect of public administration have elaborated and evolved over the modern and postmodern period. I have spoken about the two conflicting and contrasting political ideologies of capitalism and communism. Later on, with the neoliberal democratic ideology, the governance was reset. It included a welfare state mandate for India and for many third world countries. Fabianism, democratic socialism, and some hybrids of communism were also inducted to change the governance framework and make this somewhat alike to what the Western democracies had, but at the same time, it had its own distinct ideology. The failure in Western world of bureaucratic organizations led to a framework for a new public administration framework and a change to what is called new public management paradigm. This new public management started to take shape in the West sometime around the early 70s and continued till the early 90s. This change in paradigm is more pronounced if you look at the OECD countries, where the change has appeared in the form of what experts call new public management. When we were in the midst of a financial crisis in the late 80s, you would also notice some features of this new public management crept into our state apparatus. This doctrine of new public management have the following big features: unbounding public sector into corporatized units organized by products, more contract-based competitive provisions, stress on private sector style management practices, stress on discipline and frugality in resource use. We in government call it economy. Then the emphasis on visible hands-on top management, explicit, formal, measurable standards of performance, greater emphasis on output controls. This underlined the need to improve at the technical operative spheres to realize more output with less input. Just go back to the early 90s when we had borrowed from IMF, our economy was in shambles. What exactly were we doing? We said this bloated state apparatus has to go. We must cut down on expenditure. We must have corporatized activities that must operate with minimal inputs and maximum output, and they must be measured productivity. And people who are taking charge of these, their efficiency or their performance is to be adjudged in the context of what they are produced in terms of products. Here, key thing that is to be understood: the citizen was seen as a client whose satisfaction was a measure of success of the framework. So the citizen typically in the new public management is a client. Like he is a client of a corporate house, like a client in a hotel, like he is a client in any other business establishment, he is also a client in public management. This was called also the neo-Weberian state. As you know, Max Weber gave us the famous doctrine and concept of the modern bureaucracy, and because it was an improvement on the modern bureaucracy to bring in efficiency and economy, this was also called the neo-Weberian state apparatus. But this model was perceived as inadequate in the 1990s. Analysts felt that the framework had this gave undue emphasis on an army of inspectors needed to evaluate indicators. So if you had a body of people to perform, you needed another comparable parallel body of people to also judge them, to evaluate them. Diminishing state functions and their transfer to private and non-governmental organizations was also a key feature which was also criticized. This is not always justifiable because under certain social and economic apparatus, continued state presence is an ideological necessity. Then industrial reduction of investment in some public sectors was also a key feature of this. And no development of a permanent affinity of client within the framework. Because the citizen was being perceived as a client, the citizen was not developing any affinity towards the state apparatus. He was getting a benefit or a service or a good, and beyond that, there was nothing which connected him to the state apparatus. Making private business supreme led to positive as well as negative consequences. The economic crisis in US and other Western countries was caused not only by objective factors in the development of the capitalist system, but also by the inability of leaders to control and regulate large volume of spending and misuse in the area of management and finance that the state had abdicated over a period of time. Based on these experiences, now a new public management model was initiated, which facilitated the growth of a modern public administration system. Such a model already existed in the northern European welfare states and in Portugal. These countries have evolved and now practice a model that is called the new public service or NPS or the new governance. This emphasizes broader citizen participation in governance, absence of corruption, polycentric democracy, transparency, accountability and other moral ethical characteristics, excellent inter-institutional cooperation and active participation of non-governmental agencies. These features, the 6 features that I have told you, they just sound like the manifesto of a particular political party. So, in India also, the system of governance that we had was producing its own contradictions within itself, and therefore there is now a clamor that we also readjust our governance system to ensure these. What is it? Participation, absence of corruption, that is probity, polycentric democracy, not one central parliamentary form of government, but government at many levels with opportunity of participation to people, transparency, accountability and other moral ethical characteristics in governance, excellent inter-institutional cooperation, that is, institutions cannot remain isolated, they cannot operate in watertight compartments, but they must cooperate with each other to ensure that we impact the citizens in the maximum way. This new governance has not yet come to dictate the daily behavior of administrators in India or in most third world countries. But modern scientists, social scientists, administrative thinkers now definitely emphasize this as a model to be sought out. The main characteristics of the new public service are serve rather than steal, pursuit of public interest, think strategically, act democratically, serve citizens not as customers but as citizens, recognition that accountability is a simple task, value people not productivity only, value citizenship and public service above entrepreneurship. In the new governance, civic participation is an essential prerequisite to democratic governance, because public spirit implies not only individual interest but more of social values, aspirations and care for others. Citizens are perceived as owners of government. Public administrators are to serve citizens with regard to multi-layered responsibility, ethics, accountability to democratic society. I invoke these concepts just to drive home one point, to go to the second part of my presentation, that the framework of governance in a given context has to create the theoretical construct first. There must be a philosophical basis on which you create a government, and within the government you create structures and organizations. This will be creating and helping design our strategies, structures and functionalities in keeping with the ideological framework. The technology as a tool then comes to play to make the strategy work, to make the communication better, to make participation more meaningful, to forge a new culture of belongingness and a feeling of inclusion, along with substantial behavior and public good attained due to such inclusion. This is what I wanted to say in a nutshell, that today's government has to be rediscovered, its strategies have to be redesigned on the basis of a new political ideology, and the public administrators then can design tools and structures which are possible to be attained. There is a time when if someone wanted to have a list of 22 lakh beneficiaries, that is the number of beneficiaries my department has, if someone wanted to have 22 lakh beneficiaries at multiple locations, that was simply technologically impossible. So today, technology is a tool to do things which were not possible to do earlier. I will now show you a couple of slides to see where we have reached in Social Justice and Empowerment Department in terms of attaining this use of technology for inclusion and what we plan to do in future. We have these 4 major programs: pension for old age, widow pension, disability pension, and financial assistance to destitute children and others. These are to be delivered in the first week of every month. Today, the funds are transferred to bank accounts of the panchayats and municipal committees, which are the disbursing agents, and this money is then withdrawn by the sarpanches or the municipal council members, and they disburse it by 7th of every month. That is expected to be disbursed. Then they, along with the receipt of such disbursal and the balance of accounts, they render it to the office of the BDPO of their respective block. The BDPO in turn sends balance of the block to DSW office, that the district office of my department, along with this receipt. Then the DSW updates the central database and sends arrears of non-receivers of pension in subsequent months along with the current pension of that month. Now there are certain shortcomings in the system. That this promise that all beneficiaries will be disbursed pension within the first week is not guaranteed. The feedback regarding disbursement and account rendering is badly delayed, sometimes going beyond that particular norm, delayed even to the extent of 2 to 3 months. This does not provide withdrawal flexibility to the beneficiary. The beneficiary has to get today, he has to take the benefit on a given day, at a given time, and of the entire amount. There are sporadic allegations of harassment and discrimination by sarpanches if the beneficiary does not see eye to eye to them in terms of local politics. Defaults in payment to about 5% beneficiary every month. And because these defaulted beneficiaries are being dealt with in a manual system, then they feel harassed when they have to pursue to get their area of benefits. What is the present status of IT in the governance of these programs? There is a central database which has been created for all pensioners. Application forms are available online. Eligibility criteria is available online. DSWs are authorized for online addition and deletion of this central database. Then this database helps us in flagging ineligible and dead beneficiaries. It also allows for deduplication of the records. Monthly treasury bills and bank payment advices are today straight away prepared from the central database, which goes to the respective panchayats and municipal councils. We do not go through our district offices at all for the transmission of money. APR generated at state level is sent to districts electronically, so that they print out the APR at that level without any addition or deletion at their level. This ensures integrity of the data. There is an online search facility for beneficiary record, whether in terms of geographical locations, in terms of time series, or in terms of an individual's benefit that has been given to them. Up-to-date beneficiary lists are also available online for people to see and verify the flow of benefit to them. These are some of the screenshots which are available in our website, whereby we can see the different parameters on which we can monitor online whenever we feel like. Now these are the stakeholders in our scheme of things. We have the Directorate of Social Justice and Empowerment. At the district level, our representatives are the District Social Welfare Officer. Then there is an intermediary called the Block Development Officer. Then we have the Panchayat and the municipal committees, which are actual disbursing authorities of these benefits. Then we have banks, which are taking the money from the state headquarters to the Panchayat and the municipal committee accounts. Then we have NIC, which is a technical support team for the purpose of creating database, updating database and running it. And then we have the treasuries, which are also electronically managed today, and they are part of the loop. And we have UIDAI, which is also now, we have, I will go on to mention how we are going to use the Aadhaar in our system to improve the system delivery. Now this is the architecture that we have for the this thing. Primarily now it is a backend database processing which has been fully completed. This is user friendly. It is web-based application. It's a bilingual Unicode compliant so that the people mostly of rural areas are conversant with the Hindi as a language. Then role-based access has been given to people at different levels so that they can monitor and contribute to the database. Then the beneficiary list is updated dynamically, which is a good thing because all of you who have experience of the social pension schemes, there is always a stream of visitors bringing their demands to district and sub-district level officers saying that our names have not been added, though we have been selected, we have been found eligible. APR generation at state level is now also taking care that there is no local level manipulation. There are about a score of disciplinary proceedings, criminal cases, vigilance inquiries going on because in the past some indiscreet officials added people without authorization, without eligibility, and money was siphoned up from the system. What are the problems in the present use of IT? That we have this delayed flow of report and account rendering. Undisbursed pensions are being disbursed through a manual system. Despite having a digital data system, interface between the department and the beneficiary is still manual and is fraught with the limitation of a manual delivery system. Then there is a voluminous record of APR, that is the pension payment receipts which are coming back to the district office. They are voluminous and storing them for a long time poses a physical form challenge of storage, retrieval and reconciliation. Then there is issue of reconciliation of account being delayed and money being kept outside the government system for a pretty long time. What do we plan to do? Riding on the pilot project of IT department in Barwala village of Panchkula district, we transferred our platform from a panchayat-based manual system of payment. We created a bank account-based payment. I must tell you that there was earlier, about 2 years back, there was an experiment to make payments through banks. But unfortunately, there was a mismatch between what was the underlying assumptions of delivery in the system, in the scheme, and the system that was put in place. But now, having learned from that experience, for the last 3 months in Barwala, we have delivered to individual bank accounts through direct transfer of accounts from the state headquarters to that place. That gives us 3 advantages. That on the 1st of every month, I can satisfactorily say that I have credited their accounts with the money without fail. 2, I have given these people the flexibility to come to the bank at their own hour of choice. Earlier, if the sarpanch is distributing from pensions on a winter morning, the old woman or the old man who is a beneficiary is not feeling well, he or she has no choice. If they don't come, they don't get it. And now another thing. Now we are giving 1,000 rupees as the social security pension. It is not necessary that the beneficiary withdraws the entire amount at one go. It is possible that he may choose to withdraw it in 2 go or 3 go. That flexibility is also now built into the system. And the system of retrieval of money in case of death, etc., is also inbuilt into the system, whereby if a beneficiary expires, the pension given to him till that month in which he expires is allowed to be retained in that account. The balance of money comes back to the DSWO's account immediately. What we are planning also is that a scannable APR, so that when the APR comes back in the manual system, and I forgot to mention one thing, that because we are talking about a physically vulnerable group, we don't want them to travel beyond their means. Present banking system, including the post offices and the regional rural banks, covers about 70% of our population who can be served in their village or in their locality itself. So what I am proposing to do, that till we have a bank or a banking agent in every village, beneficiaries of those villages and localities where there is a bank branch available will be brought onto this system. And the rest will be pursued with the manual system till we have an agent who can serve them in the village itself. This Durana experiment of the old system through DBT is continuing. The Barwala experiment I introduced to you. Introduction of scanning technology is in the pipeline. Aadhaar and bank account seeding of beneficiaries has also started. I have a wish list. If the state IT department prepares a universal citizen database with socio-economic and personal data, it would be easy for me not to go seeking beneficiaries, but I will identify the potential beneficiary list will be generated from the citizen database itself. Then universal Aadhaar-based payment for all benefits flowing from different departments could go to all beneficiaries, and we could create probably an entitlement statement cutting across all departments and organizations for individuals as well as families. Then we could give payment alert through SMS and scheme accessibility through e-Disha centers and the planned CSs. This small little initiative that we have done, primarily at the back end of the scheme, has been a winner of the Financial Inclusion Award in 2012 by the President of the Economic Advisory Council to Prime Minister of India. It was also a finalist 2013 for National E-Governance Award by Government of India. Thank you.
Now I would like to call Vishlesh to come up to this presentation.
Good afternoon, distinguished guest, Madam Aurora and Mr. Das. I know it's a tough job for me because it's a post-lunch session and time is too short. So every other speaker has already spoken, so I have little matter to discuss. So I will not take much more time. I will finish. Basically, I just like to talk about social inclusion, the electronic governance or e-governance. As Madam earlier told that we are all getting more into social institutions. Now, as per the rule of UK government, this is that the converse of social exclusion is an affirmative action for social exclusion. And that circumstances in habit or that lead to or only lead to social exclusion. How people are socially excluded? It is basically on the transportation, health segment, equivalent technology, say for ICT, for all, poverty, job scope, so everything is excluded. So government should work on the future, on the more directive, on these projects which include in the people in the main trade, and that reduce substances, reduce of crime, and any other things. Key factors the government, any government center aim to improve everyone's quality of life now and for the future. We are creating technology, we are doing projects, we are doing a lot of things we listened about. Aadhaar, we are listened about e-governance and NPR or whatever service, PO services, everything. But ultimately, as a citizen of everybody, we aim that we should get the service. What services we are getting, how we are making our life, upliftment of our life, that is more important. So, the 4 key areas for social inclusions are electronic service delivery, improving use of knowledge. We are creating, you are creating everything. You are giving like some kind of things we are doing in every country, everywhere, in every state. But we should teach, the next stage, we should teach our citizens how to gain access to the technology, knowing how to use the technology, and knowing what advantage it brings. Means their incentive. Incentive is not only cash. My quality of life improves. It's an incentive for me. I am getting a better job. Incentive for me. I am getting better civil infrastructure, amenities. It's an incentive for me. Relating to the outside world, and typically a lot of places, and for public, or election manifesto or something, government is doing some of the project, but it is nowhere. Ultimate results is nowhere coming to the. You cannot relate to the people outside of this vision, outside of the world. So outside every project, everything, we should be connected to the people. So that social upliftment will automatically, it will come. And improving internal process or systems. There are, all of you agree that there are a lot of room for improvement for this. So social inclusion, where we can do, it's a powerful tool towards a unified society and one land. Because in India, we are empowering with dedication. We have diversified cultures, diversified people. Everywhere it's and together, if we make social inclusion, the solidarity of diversity of society can make one country, one India. The ideas for service providers, from a service perspective, social inclusion framework can be used to think about how existing services and programs can be conceptualized using a social inclusion framework, how future services and programs can be developed to reflect a social inclusive perspective. I am doing a program, I am running some project on e-governance, which doesn't relate to other people. There are a lot of things which I don't want to bring, it can open a new debate, but hardly we are not judging on those. There is a discussion should be there. Is this really beneficial for the ultimate user, the people? Or is it some kind of thing, some kind of things government initiated, it came idea from the abroad and we just implemented. How future, extent to which there is involvement and input of community members in corporate governance, employment and training opportunities. We are doing a lot of development, a lot of things on a MP fund or any other fund, but without connecting the local people, without connecting the community. We are not taking the feedback from them. So their social exposure is there. So to correct these inclusions, we should connect with the people. So the community of members, training opportunities, evaluation, monitoring of service and program under various government grants. Then review and reflect upon the physical access to the service. Example, access to the public transport. In India, public transport is still in many things, it's a luxury. We are not, in many cities, public transport even. In a large metropolitan, I don't want to name, the public transport is still not proper way. People are more using into private. Disability access, the feature or the systems we are generating is a disabled person can access to this. Safety of the local area, provision of child care or health care, affordability of fees, service threshold criteria, and ways in which the service has addressed this issue. So, it is similarly, some of you know that Maslow's law of motivation, it is not, it follows, ultimately. So, ultimately our basic needs is survival need. And then we come to safety and security. Then we come to belonging, attending programs, social connections. Then when you get education, job seeking, everything fulfilled, we are trying to develop our self-esteem. And then we can reach on the self-actualization, the final stage. When we can reach the broader plans, we can do a lot of things on society. That is the complete social inclusion will be completed on the self-actualization phase. We are far from behind. So it's a future area. Madam has told everything about dividing. Obviously it's a, as Mr. Nandan Kulkarni told that Aadhaar will act as a social inclusion factor, where many more denied social benefit because they cannot prove the identity. I don't want to highlight more, everything is there. But already like there are a lot of provisions where Aadhaar can play a role. Financial inclusion will be achieved in the system when all bank loan accounts are identified with UID. Madam told 256 banks, we are miles to go further on that. Land records linked to UID will eliminate and Benami holdings. PDS, the right family in right quantity always. Disbursal of benefit like pension. So Das was mentioning about that. RTO department, we are still very weak in the RTO. Passport office, insurance facility will be given to one insured and attendance system. Everything can be linked to Aadhaar, which will improve social inclusion can be a future role. Key challenges is across the 4 pillars of e-governance. People, government is what any e-governance work in 4 people. For governance, people, process, technology and resources. The key concerns are enabling to replicate isolated success with a quick turnaround. A lot of projects we are doing is isolated success. Even for the CST, somewhere it's a very success, somewhere this is model pilot project. But many ultimate things, I don't know what is happening there. So it cannot be an example. Lack of skill and large scale effective project management and thoughtful process re-engineering resulting delay in overall projects. All of us, the governments, we know that. Zero or poor connectivity at the district, block and village level. Successful implementation of IT projects in government or private sector or PPP model often faced with respect to the changes or design of scope of a project. Then funding issue, I don't know highlighted before, and red tape mechanism. Now coming into RICO, just if 5 minutes more, what we do, and I will cover up what we are doing towards social inclusion also. I'm part of RICO Global, it's a Japanese MNC, it's a Fortune 500 company, around $23 billion conglomerate, and our net worth is a $9 billion. And we are running through 3 founding principles: the love your labor, love your country, and love your work. This is our 4-5 group headquarters. India reports to Asia Pacific, Japan, Singapore office. Our production services, we are in product and IT services, printing services, projection system, production building, cloud services, data center, digital cameras. Some of our famous brands, RICO. Yesterday, you know that in the school, all of us using some psycho-style think paper. Now that's gone. That was not digital duplicated. So yesterday, RICO company, worldwide RICO has acquired around 10 years back as organization. We have Infotech, those are Indian company are here. Pentax is a camera, a famous camera and surveillance camera. RICO is worldwide. Recently, we launched India the Pentax camera. We also have RICO camera. And Pentax is the only lens manufacturer in the whole world. Whatever is using other competition camera, they are 98% chances they are using Pentax lens. And RICO Docs, I'll come later, it's a document management platform. We are also Society Evolution, we are a Fortune 500 company. We are world 100 most ethical companies for 5 years in a row. Global most sustainable corporation is not 9 consecutive years. Yesterday we got the 10th consecutive years award globally. And we are very cash rich company. World best official economics company, we have got this award also. In India, we run our 360-degree experience. We are present in 22 locations, direct presence including Chandigarh, and we have around 2,000 dealers. So we are across all the country we are present. That is our prime facility. We have nationwide 4 logistics centers, every region, which and we have our Calcutta. We have a huge data center. And our prime data center and second data center is in Delhi. We have the IT hub in Calcutta. And we also have opened our factory in Gandhinagar. This is the main product solution, imaging product. We are the #1 brand in multifunction device color segment. We have large printer or production printers. Some of you, for information, the checkbooks we are using, more than 20 checkbooks are printed on our machine, and RICO has awarded the most MICL compliant checkbook. It's a number of PSU banks and ICICI, HDFC, Axis, all are printed on our checkbooks. Your Airtel bill, your Vodafone bill, your BSNL bill, all are using our product, our printers. We have our cloud network. A lot of customers are using our cloud, including the government. We have our world shortest ultra-through projectors and mobile devices, tablets. Some of the imaging products I already told. We are very green initiatives. The IT infrastructures, we have data center, networking, virtualization services, backup, disaster recovery, infrastructure management services, and common software services. Everything we are covering. Here SI, RICO is an organization which is OEM, as an SI organization. This is the various clouds we are offering. Cloud is a software services, then infrastructure services, Dexter is a cloud, RPAS, our remote infrastructure product we have. We are ISO 27000, 9000 and 14000 organization. We are a CMA level 3 organization. We have 24/7 toll-free customer and customers service call number, and also toll-free also customer service portal. Coming into our RICO docs, this is a unique product developed in India. Unique product which is basically can be developed on any kind of your existing tool, on your CRM, on document management, on ERP, and it can create your digitalization, your entire things that you can retrieve and then run the workflow. It can work anywhere. Okay. This is a 360. We are building business application, IT infrastructures. So everything we are present. Some of our key alliances, all the industry leading brand, we are more into platinum partnership we have with everybody. Some of the government, RICO, we have more than 70% we are in the government is our customers. So we are very strong in the government and PSU segments. And this is few experiences. We have done a lot of UID enrollment. We are doing a lot of states, more than 2 crores we do UID enrollment. UP districts we have done for a lot of projects for education, with tablets and laptops for government or some Chhattisgarh. West Bengal, Bihar, e-educations, e-districts, various PSU, we have presence almost all BFSI segment, and corporate customer we have more than 50,000. So the last slides, we are also doing social inclusion because we are doing a lot of programs by education for donating our machine to the education society and the far area for children. We are giving them very low cost tablets and cloud solution to people where there is no more, internet is very poor, there is no education, we are running through education program through this. So we also participating on social inclusion things. With this, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
e-KYC, because that provides the identity to all the institutions for any person, which helps in financial inclusion. Just 2 minutes. Thank you. ICICI is here.
So we are able to get his address, we can verify from customer side then and there. Address, date of birth, mobile number and everything, which is mostly 80 to 90% is correct. So we just need to confirm the whole thing gets populated in form also. So data quality is very good. That's what we have experienced so far.
Which means the customer name, at least 100% of the cases are you happy?
Yeah. Name, address and even date of birth. All 3 things which we use. Photographs, yeah. The quality is quite good.
After that, you require the photocopy of the customer document.
What happens is the moment that is pressed, the information is sent from Aadhaar to our server, and we create a PDF of that. So no document is needed. We have a, if you want, we can show the.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have a photocopy. I can show you that also. So what happens is there's a PDF which gets generated, which is a file which has all the detail of customer printed on it, and which we store in our archive.
This is ICICI Bank or
ICICI Prudential Life Insurance. Prudential Life Insurance.
only life insurance?
Correct.
What about the bank?
Now done the takeaway. 7 institutions.
Total 7. Axis Bank has done, OBC has done.
No, what I'm saying is, what about your bank? For your
Bank also-
bank customer service?
Bank is in the process of integrating it. We started this long back, so we have been able to integrate it.
Or Axis Bank is there, OPC has started in our region. They have become AUA. So the process is a bit long. So they are in the process of, I think, we have more than 100 applications. NSDL is also.
I mean, government of Rajasthan is also, they are talking about e-KYC. They are trying to become KUA. So they will be able to utilize this service for their.
But banks need KYC every 4 or 5 years, right? So the updates.
And if I want to integrate your administration KYC with my IT application, there any charges? And what is the mode of integration with your database?
There's no problem. In fact, we will facilitate. Anytime you plan any application, we can help you to facilitate. We really can facilitate. We have no problems.
Tell me one thing, I was just curious to know this. Like from ICICI, it was stated that keep a copy thereof and make your copy is kept in your server bank. What is your system of capturing the change or updation of data fields in the UID records? Because for you, one of the key requirements is not only the person's name and his identity, but his address as well. So when there is updation of certain data fields in the UID records, how does that get reflected in the records maintained by you in yourself? Or those remain without being updated?
Currently we have provision for the first data upload. Post that for updating address, customer can give us a declaration, post which address can be updated by us, while the suggestion is not.
What will you ask for from the customer when he asks for this data updation? Say for example, address is one most mobile field.
Correct.
What will you ask from him?
Generally, as of
You don't accept simple declaration, you say कोई bill लेके आओ, कुछ और लेके आओ. Because customer today is faced with a problem, and anywhere and everywhere. Whenever his address changes, any agency for the first time when he has to give a proof of address, which proof of address should he give?
Correct. So currently,
You know, in our Aadhaar system, we also started with updated systems.
Keshni, my limited
Because
point there
the
is,
best thing is
even your guy, when updation is asked for, wants a supporting evidence. I change from one government house to the other government house. I have at least an allotment letter.
you have the electricity bill.
No, electricity bill comes after 2 months, after taking the connection. What I'm saying is the customer is really at a loss with what supporting evidence does he go to any entity to say for the first time when he goes and says, this is my change address.
sir,
I think we need to think about it and find a solution.
We have the system of, I think we don't have any problem in updation today.
currently what
How are we doing it?
No, I think
You are accepting, you are asking for a documentary evidence.
Yeah, I think
I don't have
it's more of a governance issue. That how can government facilitate the easy address to resident relocating to some other location? Typically, like if I am working with government, I will.
Then there is no problem. But if it's a tenant and he's got that rent agreement, will that be okay? Then the rent agreement.
As a landowner, I like to sign a lease agreement for less than 11 months, not create a tenancy problem for myself. I refuse to give it back. So there are a whole lot of issues. I think we need to think through and resolve this. There are
Because
a
I
lot of
think
people who are coming
initially if
across.
we have the introducer system, in the documents also we need to work on that system.
Sir,
You're right.
sir, just to
We
add
need to
on,
involve that system also.
Malik sir, just to add on, there's
But
another
if
addition to it.
the Aadhaar is updated, then again with eKYC you can check up if it is updated.
Well, in that case, what will happen is once the Aadhaar is updated, the customer comes next time, then the customer only needs to say, my address is changed, it is incorporated in Aadhaar records, please download, substitute the PDF stored version, earlier one, with the later one.
Yes.
That's a feasible thing.
That is a feasible.
That's what we can.
So I think yes, even because earlier we have that introducer system, we need to involve some other system also. You're right, we'll introduce.
I mean, in addition to that, the rent receipt has also been used sometimes.
See, it depends.
If it is taking the house on a rent.
It also depends at what place the person is going. Say for example, I'm just telling you, there is so much of a communication gap. Yesterday when we were going to Pinjore for the dinner, the conference dinner over there, the toll plaza guy doesn't allow my car to pass through as a government vehicle. It has a government number, it has a flag, But he says for me a government vehicle is the only one which carries a red beacon. And under Supreme Court instructions, the red beacon, Haryana government also has said X, Y, Z is only entitled and rest is not entitled. So my driver faithfully has removed the red. So he says, can't you see the flag, can't you see the number and this? He says, लाल बत्ती है तो जाएगा, नहीं तो उधर लग गया. Now, there is a whole lot of lag in communication to the concerned party. I am talking of a residence situation. And that is what is happening, that whosoever, as a UID enrollment agency, is also charged with the responsibility of updation, he or she accepts certain documents and does not accept.
Updation is done very centrally, so we don't have much problems. And I think you must agree that so many people have got their accounts which would never had one. And I think financial inclusion has been our mandate and we have really done it.
Actually, what I am saying is it's an
evolving process.
It's an evolving process, but as and when the issues come to our notice, probably we must flag them on one side.
Yes, we must.
With an approach to resolve them.
In fact, ours is such an evolving institution and we keep on learning. And I think this point is well taken. We will include that.
It's more of a universal problem.
I think we will include in it. Good. Thank you very much.
Madam, this is a soul-searching question. Okay. From a true social inclusion standpoint, do you really require an address? I don't need this. Do you really require an address? Because, see, you're saying social inclusion, you're talking of people in the slums, you're talking of people in the streets who do not have an address. I mean, I don't want an answer for this, but
today, in Aadhaar, in fact, most of the slum people, I think they are the first ones to get it now. That is the advantage. And then another thing is you are authenticable anywhere. Person from Bihar comes, at least he is identified. He is identified.
I think we have come to a point where we need to separate service delivery from the perspective of identifying an individual as opposed to an individual staying in an address.
I really wish we can, but I think it's difficult.
Sorry for interruption. Sorry for intervention. There are issues, like I have a difference of opinion. There are issues for Aadhaar which are already before the Supreme Court. So here, what we are saying is the framework has been given, we are working according to that framework. Say for example, I have a major issue, why it should be for a resident, why it should not be for a citizen. As a resident, whether a terrorist is able to get an Aadhaar number or not. As an infiltrator is able to get an Aadhaar number or not. There are so many issues, but those are larger policy issues.
It is a framework which can be used. That's what I say. It's a platform to be used. Anybody else? Yes.
Ma'am, thank you for setting up a stall here, for I got my card made here.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
But my question is, why there are very few outlets in Gurgaon for issuing cards? I've been told in Gurgaon
We've done 93% already.
Achha.
Though our generation has not been that good.
LPG subsidy is coming into the picture now from
Let's
March.
go.
So people are rushing.
Keep my fingers crossed that luckily it is on board because I was worried about Haryana issues. In fact, we've done in Gurgaon about 72% of Aadhaar generation. There is a gap. I've already requested Deputy Commissioner. In fact, your additional Chief Secretary also requested all the Deputy Commissioners to start village-wise campaign. And DC Gurgaon has almost started. It's already been given machines.
Thank you, ma'am.
55 machines are already working.
55 machines are working here.
We are increasing more.
So today we have the full Aadhaar team here to really count.
My purpose is served here, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Baki gaye body.
At least for a cylinder, sir.
No, Sardana, you should come up with an option, being an extended part of Altron, that why don't you offer to set up 10 machines over there and become a certification agency?
Yes, Kerala is doing it.
Boss is
Kerala is doing it.
Take it, boss, sir.
Caltron has done it. They've done it very well. They've done 99% Aadhaar generation. Anybody else? Yes, Varun, you were. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for really such a patient hearing. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank all the dignitaries for answering all the queries. We all witnessed another interactive sessions, and I would now like to request Keshni ma'am to present the token of appreciation to all the dignitaries. Can we have the shawls and mementos? To Shri P.K. Das ji. Can we have a huge round of applause? Sir touched upon various aspects of the role of governance in the Sir talked about growth of modern public administration system. Now to Shri Krishna Bhattacharya ji. Now I would like to request Shri P.K. Das ji to felicitate ma'am.
पूरा खोलेगा वो भी पूरा खोलेगा so that you have something.
And touched upon all the challenges of e-governance, Aadhaar as a financial address, ensuring efficient detection of fakes through Aadhaar. It was really an interactive sessions which we had, and now we are having a quick tea break of 10 minutes. Can we have a group photograph of all the dignitaries on dais?
With the ACS.
Yes. So please come, sir. Please.